I think one of the reasons they don't do that is because the Earth isn't round, and so you can't do that.
Oh, God.
So speaking
is
of
it time?
people that don't believe in the Earth being round and launching rockets,
Yeah.
we do have
Tim
a
is
story
conflicted
about
about
this.
talking about this. I
I
can tell.
know. Yeah.
Mad Mike,
Mad Mike.
bring
Mad
it.
Mike, R.I.P.
Yeah, so I'm sure you guys have heard about this by now, but Mad Mike Hughes, he was an American daredevil. He was kind of famous for building
What
this
a great title, Daredevil.
daredevil. Yeah.
Yeah,
Slash
like
limo
hey,
driver.
like do you on Tinder? Is that what you throw on there? Like
I'd hope so.
I like to think of
Mike,
myself as a
37,
truth devil.
Daredevil.
But so he got a lot of attention because he was not only I think he holds the record for the longest limo jump actually, which I think is funny.
He jumped over a limo or jumped
using
while driving
a
a
limo.
limo.
Yeah.
Oh.
So he's been out there doing crazy things. Yeah. And then he got a little more attention recently because he was developing the steam-powered rocket that he had flown a couple times. I think this was his third attempt at flying it. And one of the, for a little while, he had stickers all over it saying, research flat Earth and stuff. And of course, there's a lot of debate whether or not he was actually, actually believed that the Earth is flat, or if he was just using that attention to draw more money. But he, watch. There's a video of him on Tosh.0. He was one of the people that Tosh.0 brought on, and he does in there, be like, I question everything. Kind of one of those. I don't know. Have you ever seen the curve of the Earth? So therefore, that's what I want to try to prove someday. He kind of had that attitude, which is worse than, it's in my opinion, that's better than the people that are just full blown hardcore going out there saying, they're lying to you and stuff. But
Tim's trying to be nice right now.
yeah, I'm trying to be nice. But anyway,
so what happened? Give us the news though. What happened?
So last week he and this is crazy because I literally knew this was gonna happen. I remember seeing his thing and I was just like, oh man, this is not gonna end well for him. Built this, uses steam-powered rocket, and steam, of course, can be a propellant. You just heat it up, that phase change, and all that pressure can shoot out, and you have this pretty decent rocket. But the idea is, he launches himself up to a max altitude of 450 feet, 500 feet, so 150 meters. So climb a hill.
Just go into a building.
Go into a tall building. Get on a Cessna in the first 3 seconds of altitude gain. Climb out, you'll be at that altitude. Basically,
so he launched himself in a rocket.
He launched himself in a rocket, and what happened is, literally on liftoff, you see, we're not going to show it because I already got enough flack for showing it on Twitter, but the parachute immediately just deploys on the launch pad. It didn't go with him at all for any reason, and therefore he went up and just came straight back down.
It's pretty brutal to watch.
Yeah.
Well, it's when you realize there was a human being in that thing, it's like, ooh.
Yeah. And then unfortunately you see a big puff of steam about 10 seconds later, 15 seconds later, after it coasts and falls and hits the ground, just a giant puff of steam. Yeah, you realize, there's human life on there.
Yeah.
And it's really a shame.
I was really confused by was how it can be called a rocket when it uses steam. And then I started researching that, and it looks like that it's called a steam rocket engine, but it's never put a person in space.
Oh, definitely not. But rockets don't need to do that either.
So what is a rocket?
A rocket is literally
I'm really confused now because I thought a rocket launched things to space.
A rocket is actually
rockets don't get up there.
But that's why it's called a model rocket.
A rocket.
It's not a rocket.
Technically,
rocket?
there's almost no difference between a rocket and a missile.
Right.
And a rocket is technically just the term of the engine. So we're kind of saying it's really like a rocket powered missile is really or a rocket powered spacecraft or a rocket. The rocket is just literally kind of the thing that shoots a bunch of stuff out the back really fast and makes you go the other way.
So if I go to Del Taco and then I go sit on a surfboard in the ocean, I am a now human powered. I'm a Del Taco rocket that is propelling myself through the ocean.
Yes. In a sense, yes.
Okay.
So for some reason,
Words.
my computer's kind of messed up, so I can't. I was just going to look up the general definition of rocket, but I think it's a little different than what people expect it to be. But
Yeah, I guess that's when I saw that. That was my first thing. I was like, huh? How is that a rocket? It didn't even that doesn't count. You know?
Yeah, it does. But so this brings up the whole. We were talking about this last week before we started filming about just like we don't really talk about flat Earth because it's kind of one of those things. Like the more you draw attention to it, maybe that's just the worse altogether. What do you guys think? That's what they want?
Like it helps it. Yeah. Right? Like I was listening to Ezra Klein on Armchair Expert, and he was talking about how, what terrorists really want is media coverage and for people to be afraid.
Yep.
And so even though, a terrorist attack will kill 50 people, which is, nothing considering how many people die every day from, say, smoking or car accidents, it instills fear. And then that's the thing. And so by giving it attention, you're feeding it.
Yeah.
So I think
exactly
that's
what they want.
Your point, right? We've shied away from talking about flat Earth because, well, the Earth is not flat. So it's kind of a stupid thing to even consider. But here's a guy that, I mean, if there any credit I would give to him is just the conviction he has to do something like that is absolutely insane. I mean, it's commendable. Someone would believe something so absurd, so deeply that he would actually, end up killing himself for it. It's amazing.
So
that he has that level, because I think most people are fakers. Most people are like the contrarian. I get sucked into this and it's dumb, but I don't think people. Like, I think people will really believe something stupid like this to a point. He went beyond that point.
Yeah.
And
you got to commend him for having that.
I've heard many people say that, and here's why I disagree with it. And I don't mean to assign motivation. I don't know what was really going on in his head or anything, but I mean, Tim, how high did you say that thing went? Like 150 meters or something?
Yeah.
I mean, if he really wanted to prove whether or not the Earth was flat, take a balloon, or get on a commercial airplane, or hitch a ride on. There's a million different things he could have done that were safer. He was a daredevil, and I feel like he probably used the flat Earth thing to either raise money or just get attention. He may have actually had that conviction, but I think it was still kind of a marketing thing for him. Like, if he really was interested in proving it, there would have been a million better ways to do it than what he did.
Yep.
So, again, I don't want to assign motivation
100%.
to people. I don't know what he was thinking, but that's my interpretation of it.
No, I think you're 100% right, and I think that's kind of why I don't want to, like, this topic, I don't want it just to be about Mad Mike Hughes, because I think that's a totally different thing. He was trying to raise attention, raise money. I think his idea was like to scale this up. For now, he's just trying to do these crazy stunts so that he can be out there and he can be the one to really determine whether or not the Earth is flat for himself, basically. Like, that's kind of the narrative that I've understood.
Yeah.
Which is, again, as Ben said, like, there's something at least respectable about the idea of, like, you're right. I mean, he died. I don't know. So let's not focus too much on this. I had this debate last week. The reason that I really wanted to, and that we were going to be talking about this on Twitter, unfortunately, where a guy started off asking a lot of just really good questions about the Falcon 9. It was after the landing failure, he was asking why aren't we seeing more about the landing failure? Where's the video of it? And I'm like, oh, it's normal for them to not, they don't have to share it. Sometimes they do later, with this or that, but you can kind of see it here in this video. And he's like, well, isn't it a really big deal when it doesn't land, And I'm like, well, it's still not the prime mission, and all that stuff. He's like, well, why didn't your cameras get it? And I'm like, well, it was, 400 kilometers away, so the landing, so I'm not going to be able to get that because it's unfortunately around the curve of the Earth. And next thing you know, I'm just sitting there following into his little rabbit hole, his little spiral, his trap. So then he starts going, well, he's like, well, what about this? And he starts posting links of SpaceX is faking it, ISS stuff. It's what? And so I took a video that he he took. Remember? Do you guys remember that launch forever ago? I don't remember what it was, like SEOCOM or one of those launches that launched over California, and everyone saw the big like ghost whale in the sky.
The plume, yeah.
The plume.
Everyone thought it was North Korea.
Exactly. So he shows me that video, or this video that a flat earther put together, saying like, look at there's, the camera. How long before the camera's going to cut? Because it changes angles from when the camera goes through the frame, and then they switch camera angles so that tracking the rocket, and they're like saying all these things. And so I go, oh my God, dude, that video has so many things wrong with it. I don't even know where to start. And he goes, so he's like, it has so many things wrong with it, but you're not even going to. You can't even point one out, so that triggered me, and I'm just like, all right, here we go. And I probably had 40 or 50 replies at 1 minute and 32 seconds. He says blah blah blah, but the actual thing is this can't be compressed. He was claiming things like it's being filled with helium, and that's how it flies. And he's like, they're putting in super chilled helium. That's why helium is rising off the rocket, and it's like, first off, why would you chill helium? All you're gonna do is make it more dense. Like, that's not how this works, and so I'm just going through every single thing that they said and catching them in like lies of saying, haha, we got them here, and they're replacing wrong false audio over tops of things. And like, I'm catching that. I'm going, here's the original live stream.
Yeah.
If you doubt this original live stream's fake, here's my live stream of that live stream. So therefore I couldn't have edited the live stream in post. This is my live stream of the live stream. So I know that this is the actual audio. Like, went through thing by thing, and it just got to the point where I realized the guy he's not listening at all.
That was my question. Did you convert him in any way?
Not at all.
It's a giant waste of time.
A giant waste of time. I spent probably 2 hours.
That's why I don't talk about it. It is a giant waste of time.
Yeah.
Well, but the problem, and maybe last week, we were going to talk about this, and part of the reason was that I saw a video from Johnny Harris, who's a great YouTuber and journalist, content creator. And he had some some survey or something that showed only 60% of young people below 25 years old or whatever believe that the Earth is and has always been round. 60%. That means 40% of people either don't believe it or have not always believed it. God. So that's a scary number, and I think that's where. You have to look at this and go, it's so dumb and it's so absurd that we have to kind of just point these things out when they're obvious like that. And part of his video explained kind of really interestingly that this whole flat Earth thing is so new. It's like very, very new. Mm. There haven't been flat earthers forever. Like there was in Greek philosopher days when we didn't know that the Earth wasn't flat. And then they figured it out really quickly. And then it was like hundreds of years of nothing. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden there was like one scientist who did something with a really long river where he ran a flag on a boat down it and saw that it didn't sink. And even though it should have. Have you guys heard of this one? It was like, it's probably flat earther, Bible type content, right? And then again, someone disproved, in those days, and this I think was 18th century, someone disproved why that experiment was flawed and didn't work, and then it was dead until the internet, until social media, until we now have a motivation to to belong to a group that will have us, and there's nothing more. There's a no more welcoming group than a group of yahoos that believe something that's not true. They're like just the cultish vibe around all the conspiracy theories are very welcoming to anybody that even lends an ear to the credence, because then it gives them more validation. Yeah. And we as humans just want to be validated. We want to belong. It's a very human nature kind of thing, that this phenomenon. Whereas before, these things would exist down at the, corner of the bar with the, 3 people talking up crazy stories. Now it's on the internet where anyone in the world can go view it. And I think that it's just a weird phenomenon that's happening here. So it's insane that this exists, but I think it's important to, to shine a light on it a little bit.
I feel like it's reflective of, and I'm gonna stumble through the wording of this because I don't know exactly how to say it, but I think it's reflective of a mindset that seems to be growing that you got to do your own research. You know, you can't listen to experts anymore. We used to have experts. We used to say this person has spent his whole life studying this, so how about I listen to that guy?
Right.
You know, and now it's like no, you gotta see it for yourself. And I've become really irate lately with that mindset. Whenever I hear somebody say, you know, you got to do your own research, I'm like, no, you don't. Like there's armies of PhDs out there doing this research. It's up to you whether you want to listen to them or not. That's all it comes down to. And you know, it's like when people say, you know, you got to do your own research on this, and I'm like, oh, you're doing your own research? Are you going down to Antarctica and drilling in a mile deep ice core and finding bubbles from 100,000 years ago and doing a spectrographic analysis of the composition of that air and comparing it to today and, you know, seeing what kind of carbon isotopes? Are you doing that? No. I think I'll listen to the guy who did do that.
No, I'm just Googling shit, and from there on, like, you know.
No, they spent 2 hours on Google searching for something that validates what they already think, and they call that research.
So you're right, because, you know, the climate change denialism is the same sense where people all of a sudden have this, like, scientists are bad, they're motivated, they clearly just want their research papers to be funded. And, like, I love that idea that people will use that fallacy, that argument that there's a motivation of money or whatever, but then they won't point that on the other side of the aisle, which is like, maybe there's people out there that are motivated by their trillions of dollar industry that is absolutely going to be devastated when they realize, oh, wait, we can't burn coal as much anymore. We can't burn oil as much anymore. Like, which one's more motivated? The entire global economy or one guy and his team of 6 people doing a research paper?
Yeah, and the deal is that the bar to pass a research paper is very high, right? So even, like, who gives a crap? Yeah, that's what I mean. So who even cares what the motivation is? Let's say their motivation is to make money and become famous, but they do it by doing actual research that is peer reviewed and you know, treated and accepted by the scientific community. Then great. Then, because in order to even do something, it has to be real. Otherwise, it doesn't get it. Otherwise, you're just making a news website with some fake news nonsense. And so that's where, yeah, you're totally right. And it's one of those things, like, even if that was a motivation, even if that was true, it wouldn't matter, because the bar to post something on a website is 0, and the bar to get an actual paper in a journal is extremely high.
Yeah.
Well, that's the scary thing, is there's some journals that now are almost like, you know, low bars, and, you know, that people don't even know enough, because our education system doesn't even value it enough to teach people that, hey, here's how a journal is supposed to work. Here's blah, blah, blah. Here's what you can trust. Here's what, like, I think our education system has been lacking, where people, and how can it keep up with the internet? Because the internet is just so quick on its heels and just can do all this stuff, that I think our education system needs to be focusing on, like, the scientific method and how do you actually teach people how to learn, right? Like, that's what we should be teaching them. Instead of teaching them things, teach them how to learn, because going forward, this is just going to get worse.
Yeah, media criticism, I think, should be like one of the top things that gets taught in schools.
William Randolph Hearst, man, it's all his fault. He started it. Yellow journalism. That was it.
So the psychology of the conspiracy theory or conspiracy theorist, I mean, there have been studies shown that if you believe in one conspiracy theory, you're more likely to believe in others. And I think a big part of it is just it really makes you feel good to feel like you know the truth.
Right.
You see through the BS. You see past what everybody else can't see.
Yeah.
You know, it's a validating thing. We used that word earlier, but it also is just a nice little self-esteem boost. I'm smarter than everybody else. I see what's really going on.
Well, it's confirmation bias, right?
Of course.
Yeah, well, you believe something, and the more you believe it, and the more you find things, then, you know, it just it's reinforcing. I think the point that you made earlier, Joe, is totally totally the right one, though, that we're entering an era where if I can't see it with my own eyes, then it must not be true. Right. And that's where I think the flat Earth thing, has momentum, I guess. And in a lot of in climate change, yeah, to that same extent, right? I can't see, that my car caused a hurricane, kind of a thing.
Right.
And when you look at data, yeah, the data it's ironic, but yeah, the data is actually hard to sift through and understand.
Yeah,
That's
and
why
tiny
the people that do
errors-
it have PhDs and have been studying it for 20 years because they are the only ones that can.
Right.
So even if you have data, it doesn't mean that you can just instantly look at it and go, "Oh, that makes sense." But this whole concept of you have to see it for it to be real, I think is a really flimsy one to base somebody's
Anything
belief
off of.
system on.
Like
Right.
atoms.
Right.
Yeah.
Germs.
Okay,
What?
Right.
Germs must not exist because I can't see them.
Right.
Microscope? No. When I look through that, it's an LCD thing. It's the lizard people, right? Whatever the hell it is, right? The wind. I was texting you guys this. How do you know the wind exists? I can't see it. I can't see where it came from. How do you know?
That's
like
what's
this
funny
is so
to me.
dumb.
That guy that I was debating on Twitter, said like, "How do you know that this is what happened? Were you there?" And I'm like, "Well, no, but here's the video of it, and you're showing these other videos, and here's how they correspond."
Yeah.
and line
How
up." He's
come
like-
your video's real, mine's not?
And he goes, "Well, I don't trust you then because you weren't there to witness it." And I go, "Have you ever been to the Super Bowl?" And he goes,
Yeah. Right.
"Yeah, I have." And I go, "Okay, well then, have you ever been to China or Japan?" He's like, "What does this have to do with anything?" I go, "Have you ever been to China or Japan?" He's like, "No, I haven't, but I don't get what this has to do with anything." I go, "So how do you know it exists?"
Yeah.
I made that
show me
point in
proof.
one of my videos. It was like, I've never been to Bangladesh, so clearly that's all a big lie.
How do you know that?
Right.
How do you know that President Trump is actually the president, and he's not CGI? I've never seen him in person in my whole life.
Right?
Well, and that's
I
another
was not
thing
there.
is now there's well, with the deep fakes and the
Deep fakes.
CGI and everything. I mean, you can fake anything.
Wait, Joe, you're in space?
I am in space. I've been
When
in
did
space this
this
whole time.
happen?
It was a green screen behind me.
Oh, space green screen.
Yeah.
Dang it.
If you guys
That
are
was
just
great.
listening, Joe just magically transported his camera to where he is now.
And some
in
parts
space.
of some parts of his headphones, but not all parts of his headphones.
I look like
Broadcast
Princess
teleport.
Leia a little
All-
bit, don't I?
space and time.
Of course, I get that a lot.
I've been thinking that for a long time,
I know, yeah.
but
it's-
I'm glad that you
it's not
finally.
unusual. I do have the gold bikini that I break out from time to time.
Yeah.
Nobody's
Hey,
laughing
what?
at that. That was weird. Okay.
The
I'll
purple
bring it back.
bikini?
I was messing around with the settings in Zoom because I was updating my debit card stuff, and I saw that, and I was like, okay, I got to bust that out this week. Just happened to work.
That's amazing. I'm very happy about that. All I'm trying to do is do that same thing, and it's probably not going to work. And
Yours will work better too.
Considering I don't have a green screen behind me, that's actually pretty impressive, isn't it?
Technology is amazing.
That was
Yeah, the
impressive.
deep
is
fake thing
amazing.
and all that stuff is pretty concerning.
There you go.
yeah, now I'm
buddy.
looking at Starship. I'm just out here in Boca Chica reporting for you guys.
See,
Yeah.
It works.
Oh,
now when
but
you actually spend the money and time to go down to Boca Chica, I'm gonna be like,
Why?
it's just a
Why'd you
Zoom
do that?
background.
Yeah.
But so I think the whole thing for me that's so scary is just that people seem to have lost trust in the system in general. And there's reasons to doubt and reasons to be like, man, this is shady or blah, 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 blah. You know, I get the criticism, but overall, like, there's still an institutional way of learning. There's still when you work and deal with the scientific method, there is no faking it. It's the least egotistical thing you can do is say, this is probably wrong. Let me try to figure out why it's wrong and if it's wrong. And I'm going to continually try to prove that it's wrong until I come to the conclusion that, okay, I've tried everything. I can't get this to be wrong. And all my friends tried it. They also can't get this to be wrong. Therefore, it's probably true. Like, that's literally what the scientific method is, you know?
Well, and that goes to your point. You know, one thing I thought about, Joe, that you mentioned was, like, when is a conspiracy theory actually a conspiracy theory or just a new hypothesis for a thing? Right? Like was it Galileo that
'Cause they're
was
kind of-
imprisoned his entire life?
Right.
Right? And it was
Maybe not
Galileo.
life, but
Yeah, but a
Was
good
it-
chunk at the end of it.
Copernicus or somebody, well, one of these astronomers from very, very early times said, look, this is not, a blanket that God puts over the sun and has holes in it. those are little suns as well, and we're actually sitting here, and it was, you're going to jail for the rest of your life and no one will ever hear from you again.
Right.
And that was the answer, right? That's what happened. I forget. Someone please remind me who that was.
I think
want to say it was Galileo.
I think that was Galileo, actually. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
But so was that a conspiracy? Was he a conspiracy theorist? Like, he saw something, there was some evidence of it, but it wasn't quite. It was totally not the accepted view of the world or the universe at the time, and it turned out he was actually correct. So now we're in the whole like that hyperdrive version of that, where things are, oh, that thing isn't real, and you might be true. You might be right. Like, there's that social media AI thing, Little Michaela, who looks and talks like a real influencer, even has brand deals, and is completely AI generated. I mean, we definitely are entering a phase where questioning things is mandatory for stuff you don't see with your own eyes. But never have I seen something like from that's already been proven in the real world forever, right? Like if something new came out and said, hey, this thing happened and this is whatever, and you're looking at it, like even when I first ever saw the two Falcon 9s landing at the same time, I looked at it and go, that's just too perfect. Like that, like I believe it because people say it's real. But I could completely see how somebody would look at that and go, no, no way.
It was funny because I hesitated to say, okay, so they had the computer animation of what, coming up before the launch, and they showed the two things landing. And then when it actually happened, I remember thinking, like, that looks exactly like the computer animation. But I didn't want to actually say that because, oh my God, how much fuel can you throw on that fire?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's, okay, so I hate the idea that scientists or like there's this idea in that conspiracy theory crowd that's like that they always say like, you're so egotistical, you know the answers. Like that's almost the mentality, is like, stop telling us what to believe, you think you have all the answers, you don't know anything. And really, again, like the scientific community is all about literally like not having the answers and therefore trying to like hypothesizing and trying to like prove it wrong.
Maybe that's the difference, is you can have a conspiracy theory, but like basically maybe the difference is between hypothesis and a conspiracy theory is that you stop trying, you ignore evidence that would disprove it. Yeah. Whereas in the scientific method, you have to accept all evidence, and you have to, our understanding of gravity, right? Like Isaac Newton is the first one to really like put that down in a mathematical model. And that's our understanding of how things work forever. And then Einstein comes along and has a different theory on it and is able to actually also put it down on paper mathematically to prove gravitational waves and things like that. Like there's a different way of looking at it than our, Newtonian view. And I'm sure at the time, before he had that answer, before he could mathematically prove this, that it was controversial, right? I'm sure it was like, you can't disprove the laws of physics, right? Yeah. And it's like, well, I did. So I think maybe that's the difference, is that a conspiracy theory like tries to just keep going down its own rabbit hole and self-fulfilling things and ignoring stuff that doesn't fit with it.
Everything that disproves the conspiracy theory is now part of the conspiracy.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes. So I want to kind of end my thoughts on this is like, the hardest thing for me was when I spent a day with Dr. Michelle Thaler at NASA's Goddard Research Center, and just outside, kind of between DC and Baltimore. And we spent a lot of time together. And at one point, she just kind of brought up like conspiracy theorists and saying like, what I don't think people realize is that when they say NASA's lying to us, blah blah blah, they're saying I'm a liar. They are saying in that statement that I am lying. This person's lying. That person's lying. And she's like, that's sad because that, like, how diminishing of the work I'm doing. Like I've been working on projects for, she's a brilliant scientist, And the other thing that was nuts is she said, the scary thing for us is we have been in the 80s and 90s where they're pulling the fire alarms, basically the triggers for, look out guys, some of the emissions we are putting into the air are destroying the ozone, right? Is like depleting the ozone, and the world went nuts and goes, okay, and everyone came to an agreement really quickly that, hey, maybe we should stop, we had like CFC bans and made it so like you couldn't
worldwide.
emit Exactly. Worldwide, the whole world came to a consensus, immediately stopped it ever being a problem. She said, if we hadn't done that by now, we'd all basically be fried already. And everyone realized it, and it was this really scary thing. And she said, the scary thing for us here is like we've been now pulling a very similar fire alarm for 30 years for global warming. Mm-hmm. And she was we're standing there literally looking at data from a laser measuring the surface of the earth, from space. Like, we're literally, she's sitting there going like, we are just continually confirming this over and over. Every new bit of data just continually says like, this is the trend we're following. And people are not taking action, saying like, how could we possibly know? She's like, here's how we know.
Yeah.
And we're constantly seeing this over and over and over. And she's like, it's just scary that we, as the world isn't taking the same notice of it. And maybe it's just because it affects so much more than this, like the CFC industry or the things that emitted CFCs. Just didn't really, that was an easy thing to transition to.
Nobody had to sacrifice anything to get rid of CFCs.
Like maybe a few little companies went under that, like, oh crap, we
gotta
only
retool our
produce
factories now.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we got to take out these CFCs from here. Is that gonna hurt our process? They're like, oh no, we were just throwing those in there for the hell of it. So yeah, we can just stop doing that.
No,
oh great.
Yeah. So, but it's just maybe it's a lot more entrenched. That there's a lot more, coal industry, huge industry, oil industry, huge industry. Have a lot more to lose by transitioning. And therefore,
the tree hugger argument isn't gonna win over businesses. It's just not. And this is what I say for cars too. Like Tesla, so exciting and so has such a strong following, not because it's an electric car, but because it's just the best car. Right. It's just literally the best one in each category, with the exception of the X, that you can buy, and it's just the best one.
Right.
And so I think any efforts to make the world more sustainable or switch to sustainable energy or whatever have to start from an economic point, and then if it's a consumer product, it just has to compete flat out regardless of the green side of it.
Right.
I just don't think that en masse enough people care to actually choose something that would be better for the planet. Small, it's a growing percentage, but it's still not significant enough to really force people to change. So the change has to come, I think,
Consumer
from an
level.
economic standpoint. It has to just either, if it's a consumer product, just has to be the best one.
Yeah.
Or from a business, industry standpoint, it just has to be make you more money. Because guaranteed, as soon as you can make more money on it, I don't give a crap what the other, I don't think people are going out trying to kill the planet. I think it's just, this is what makes me the most money. And if you have a better thing that makes me more money, I will happily switch to that.
Yeah.
That's my view of it. Because that's, if anything, the thing that people care about more than anything else.
And for me, I think a company like Tesla that has made electric cars cool because they're faster, they have more, their particular cars have like the best technology. I think that's doing as much for anything as that, because that changed my mindset. When I started buying, I love fast cars. When I went out to start buying, a car before the Model 3 again, I looked at all of my options. I literally was like, maybe I'll finally buy a Nissan GTR. That was my old dream car.
Bugatti Chiron. Right.
Maybe I'll go buy a Bugatti Chiron finally. No,
finally.
But no, it was all things were on the table. I was going to be spending, a lot of money. I could buy a nice used Nissan GTR, all these things. And it came to the point where all things considered, everything on the table, the Model 3 was the only one that was this fast. It could drive itself, could do X, Y, and Z. I love the idea of just being able to plug it in at home and still road trip with it and all these things. And the cost of running it is dirt cheap compared to a GTR, yes.
But that was later, right? Though that consideration is after the fact, which is, I think...
Well, I came to that conclusion, obviously, when I actually fulfilled the order.
Solar panels, for example, are a good example A lot of examples. I don't think anyone really goes around being like, I really want my roof to be shiny and have this big piece of glass on it. Like, I don't think that's the only reason you get solar is because you want to save money. That's it. Some people, maybe you don't need solar. It actually is financially more. It's like, a 0.001% of people would do that.
Right.
Everyone else gets solar because it's going to save you money.
Yeah.
And that is just a truth that it doesn't matter what you believe or what your identity is. If I was paying $600 a month for 2 air conditioning units running 24/7 in Dallas, now I'm paying $100 for that. Hell yeah.
Right.
Right. I think that's to me what it comes down to.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for checking us out, guys. I hope you enjoyed this clip from our podcast.
We do a weekly show here on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe to Our Ludicrous Future, where we discuss all the things that are going to make our future totally ludicrous.
You can join us here on YouTube or at any of your favorite podcast places. Plus, if you want to get some behind-the-scenes stuff and join a cool community, you can help support the channel at patreon.com. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.